A year and a half ago, I found myself in a weird situation where I was in the middle of the intersection and stalled in my old BMW 3 Series. This was a traumatic event. I was there for 45 minutes until the tow truck came, and after that, among a plethora of other issues with my car, I decided that I needed a new car. At the time, I had decided I wanted to buy either a used Model S or a new Model 3, which were pretty similar in price point, and I ultimately decided on the Model 3. I did a lot of research on this, and I spent about 3 months deciding before I finally picked the 3, and I'm going to share with you the top 3 things that influenced my decision. Number 1 was the technology of the car. Now, there are a bunch of things I can talk about here, but I'm going to stick to just a few points, and the first of which is the charging time of the car. The Model 3 is known for having a faster charger in it than the Model S does. In fact, if you were to stop and supercharge a Model 3, you'll actually be done in anywhere from 15 to 20 minutes. If you were to stop and charge a Model S today, it usually takes about 30 to 45 minutes for a new one, and for an older one, it's usually 45 to 60 minutes for a full supercharge. This was something that did apply to me. I do a lot of traveling back and forth between my home in Las Vegas to California, and that's something I really wanted to consider for each time I make that trip. Next, the software in the cars is very different. The software in the Model 3 is built and designed to be able to handle the full self-driving suite, which is coming out soon, according to Tesla. And when that new software is out, the cars will be able to drive on their own. Now, we don't have an exact timeline for when that will be done, but Tesla's been very consistent at rolling out new features for the full self-driving suite. And the most recent one is being rolled out this week, where the car is able to stop at stoplights and stop signs completely on its own, which is incredible technology. The Model S at the time that I was looking at, the used ones, came from an era where there was not the proper hardware and software to be able to handle that technology. And so, yes, you could buy the upgrade today, and it's a $2,500 upgrade from MCU 1 to MCU 2, which is the hardware upgrade needed for a used Model S to be able to handle those same features. But all that being said, I felt a little more comfortable having a car that was designed for it as opposed to a car that was able to be upgraded towards it. Another massive feature for me was the number of cameras. The Model S had a change in 2016, October, where the car went from 2 cameras being standard to 8 cameras being standard on the outside build of the car. And that's a really big upgrade, something that is standard on all Model 3s. And for the price point between the two cars that I was looking at, I would have rather purchased an 8-camera car than a 2-camera car. Besides the fact that the hardware is obviously better, a lot of the software upgrades that have come out since then have been specifically for cars that have been built after 2017 August, where there was a change in the computer chips used for the car. And lastly, I actually really just like the technology and the way that the car was built on the inside. It's minimalistic, it's really cool looking, very futuristic, not a lot happening, there's almost no buttons, and the screen is horizontal. A horizontal screen gets a lot of weird looks, and I get a lot of questions about my horizontal screen, but it's really not that strange, and you get used to it pretty quick, and it's built for movies. And once we're in the future where you're going to be watching a movie on the way to work, not really controlling your car, I'd rather have a horizontal screen than a vertical screen to watch movies on. Number 2, resale value. This is very important, and this I think was the biggest factor for me. I spoke to a friend who actually worked at Tesla at the time, and he told me a lot about his opinions about resale value of used cars versus newer cars. And Tesla is, yes, a car company, but think of them also as a technology company. And everybody wants the latest tech, right? You want the latest iPhone. You want the iPhone 11, not the iPhone 7. And as years go on and new technology comes out, the year before loses value. Think of it as like a double depreciation if you're buying something that's already outdated technology. So to me, that was a very large factor. I wanted something that was going to last with its value for a long time, and especially if the full self-driving suite of upgrades and software was still being worked on and probably would be worked on for years to come, That's something that I considered to be a much better investment of my money than something that was already older and would struggle to handle future updates. Also, I already mentioned that I really liked the minimalistic interior. I think that we're here in 2020 and that we're looking at a new change in the way that cars are designed. And I think that minimalistic and I think futuristic are going to be two massive themes in all future upcoming vehicles. If you look at some of the concept cars that are out today, a lot of them are gearing towards just easy, simple interiors, especially as the world's getting ready for what genuinely will be a revolution of self-driving cars. We might still be a year or two or longer away from actual self-driving cars being allowed on the road to drive entirely for you. But when they do, I think that cars are dramatically going to change. And I think that the more futuristic the car that you're buying now, I think that the better its value will be when that change comes. Number 3, the Model 3 has less maintenance than the Model S. And that to me is very important. I'm going to be honest, I'm a little bit of a lazy person when it comes to needing to take care of things, especially my tech. I prefer to have something that's a lot less maintenance. And the Model S has a couple of big things in it that do require some more maintenance. One, it's got a lot more moving parts in it. The door handles are automatic, which means that there are little motors in those door handles that eventually will break down. And there are more buttons on the interior. You'll notice if you look at the steering wheel of a Model S versus the steering wheel of a Model 3, there's a lot more buttons, and buttons of course can break, and they do. It's really cool to have that minimalism in the maintenance as well as the look. So that to me was a big feature. The Model S's boast air suspensions, and air suspensions are incredible. However, if you're planning on keeping a car for a long time and the car ends up going out of warranty, then that air suspension breaks. Unfortunately, it can be a bummer to deal with. Besides being expensive, it's something that isn't usually an easy fix when it goes out. This isn't necessarily a massive problem, but if I'm looking at a purchase and looking at something long-term down the road, if I may keep the car for 10 years, possibly even 20 years, then that's something that I definitely wanted to consider. I have driven both a used Model S and the newer Model 3, and I had driven both of them extensively before I made my decision. I appreciate the air suspension. However, I also appreciate the opposite. Riding on a cloud is fun, and that's what people commonly refer to it as. It's like riding on a cloud. But I didn't notice it being so much of a difference that it was a make or break deal for me in just the standard spring suspension of the Model 3. In fact, there were a couple of points where rounding corners and some of the handling of the car just felt a little nicer on a spring suspension as opposed to the air suspension. It felt a little bit more like I could feel the road, like I was on a little more control of my car. Ultimately, the technology, the resale value, and less maintenance in the Model 3 were the top 3 things that really pushed me towards making that purchase. And I bought my car towards the end of 2018, and I have loved my car every step of the way. If you found info in this video helpful, please consider subscribing. Also, I have another video similar here. It's going to be about the Model Y versus a used Model X, which of course is very popular today. A lot of people are buying Model Ys, and here are my thoughts on how that should look too. But go watch that video and let me know if you guys have suggestions for another video. Comments down below.